And so for myself, raised Catholic, I began my catechesis began within the Novus Ordo up until the age of 8, if my memory serves me correctly. I had received my baptism and my first communion within the Novus Ordo. After which, we lost some very good pastors, some very good priests who were at my family's multi-generational parish. At least, just my great-grandfather and all of my grandfather's siblings and my father grew up with this parish. And my at some point, the two priests who were there were sent away by the local archbishop. My hometown happened to be the seat of the diocese, and the archbishop at the time was more concerned with writing mystery novels than he was with shepherding the flock. And one of the impediments to him being able to write his mystery novels was to make sure that tradition was squashed. There was no parish, there was no church in my hometown that celebrated the Latin Mass ever. Even all the way up until I left Pennsylvania and came down here to Virginia. Now, at the time, I did not know the reasons for the dismissal of the two parish priests. And I would later be informed by my father, who recounted that it came about because the two priests were beginning to express interest in having celebration of both the new and old Mass in the same parish. And as soon as the archbishop found out, they were gone. The priest that came in during I can't even remember what it's called, but the equivalent of the Confiteor in the Novus Ordo, whenever that would begin, the priest would never utter the word sin. And it drove my father mad, to the point where I think it was at least the third or fourth Sunday that we attended Mass, my father had had enough, and he stood up, and he stood up during the public confession, and this I remember clearly, my father saying, "It's called sin, Father," and he gathered us up, my whole family, and we left. My parents then would consult with one of the bishops at the diocesan cathedral, who was a little more friendlier to tradition, and who my parents were fairly familiar with. And he gave my parents direction on what the next steps were. He had us come and attend at the cathedral a few times until there was another incident. And this incident want to say it was during Advent, actually. It may have been the second Sunday of Advent. And they were insistent on singing hymns, which is kind of contradictory to what I'm used to experiencing now during Advent. And the congregation just wasn't engaging with the music. Maybe two people who were attending were singing. And the priest or bishop, whoever it was that was celebrating, he interrupted the service. He interrupted the mass to come down off of down away from the altar, and he scolded the congregation for not fully participating in the hymns. At that point, my father, in this instance, he did not say a word. He gathered us up, and we left. Afterwards, we would attend, I remember one of the first Latin masses that I attended, I believe, was in a crypt beneath the, I don't know if it's the crypt, but beneath the National Basilica of the Immaculate in Washington, D.C. was the first time I encountered a Latin Mass. And I think it was a one-off because we never went back. We never went back to that one. But while we were there, we met some Opus Dei fathers who pointed us in the direction of St. Boniface in Pittsburgh. So we would get up every morning on Sunday, and we would, crack of dawn. Mass, I think, was at 10, and we were living it was about 2 hours at the time. The Route 22 hadn't been developed to what it is today. Now you can get to Pittsburgh from my hometown in about an hour and 30 minutes, give or take traffic. So we would pack up and we would, 6:30 in the morning, hop in the car, or we would borrow my late grandfather's van. He had one of those converter vans, and because it was big enough to fit all of us. And so we would get in that and we would drive to Pittsburgh, to St. Boniface. And for the life of me, I cannot remember the name of the pastor who was there. But we attended there for a number of years. Let's see. I have to count. Okay. Yes. So to the best of my recollection, I believe that at least 3 of my siblings were baptized at St. Boniface in Pittsburgh. I think also while we were there, we came to know and became, my father became a close acquaintance of the gentleman who created Catholic Match, which is an online Catholic dating website. I would say in name only at this point, since on there you can advertise what dogmas of the church related to dating in the marital life are that you affirm. And so I could say it's Catholic match in name only, because so many of the profiles of the women on there are they all reject the Immaculate Conception, and they reject the teachings on marital sex, and they reject the teachings of um, abortion and contraception. So take that with a grain of salt. But anyhow, so at some point, the then Archbishop Worrell, who later became Cardinal Worrell, eventually took an axe to the Latin Mass in Pittsburgh after the pastor of that parish went on Mother Angelica and made the case for the Latin Mass. He must not have liked what the pastor had to say. So for a number of years, we were left without a place to attend. Eventually, we found a small little church in the middle of rural Pennsylvania, about 40 minutes away. We would drive there. I remember his name, Father Brandon. He was this very kind hunchback of a. He was a hunchback, and I remember his last. Before he was sent away, we took him on. We gave him a tour of the region. He was a very well traveled priest, but I forget the reasons why the Mass stopped, why the Latin Mass stopped there. So now eventually I grow up. I become an adult. I get my degree in nursing. I start working as a nurse. My family moves to Virginia before I spend yet 6 more years in Pennsylvania. And during this time, I guess you would say would have a crisis of faith. I fell away. At some point, got swept up into Zen Buddhism, and from there I had begun making preparations to start involvement with sort of the modern misconceptions of ceremonial magic. I got swept up in this idea of forming your own Wiccan tradition, and that there were different flavors of Wicca, and one of them was Christian Wicca, and why it had to be Christian was, I guess, just the back of my mind yearning to remain somehow connected with my family, as I was living alone at the time. I had friends. I had acquaintances, and I had one friend who behaved like a sister, who I'm still in contact with today, despite unfortunately her being very hard-broiled and very dedicated to some hodgepodge form of witchcraft, but in reality it's more like the TikTok variety. It's pure aesthetics for the sake of the dopamine hit that she thinks it gives her. I pray. I do pray for her. Anyhow, this at some point, well, I should say, at this point, I was the only one of my siblings that received First Communion. All of the other parishes that we attended that had Latin Mass, they never lasted long enough. Until long enough for my siblings who came to the age of reason until they were able to begin participating in the other sacraments. So eventually there was a parish, just to kind of backtrack. Eventually, before my family left, before I graduated from nursing school, we had found a parish in central Pennsylvania that was being run by a Benedictine monk from Latrobe, the Latrobe Monastery. And as I understand it, even to this day, he still celebrates the Latin Mass. In fact, I recall on a number of occasions he had stated in homilies that he would rather die. He would rather die than to give up the Latin Mass. And so they would have to tear him from the parish unless they threw him in a casket, as he would jokingly say. When we started attending, he had the free-standing altar in addition to the high altar. But he had the freestanding altar on wheels. He actually called it Luther's table. And he would do new Mass on the freestanding, and then he would do the Latin Mass. And when it was time for the Latin Mass, he would roll the freestanding altar off to the side in front of one of the side altars so that they were free to process in a straight line up to the foot of the high altar for the Latin Mass. Thankfully, that eventually the freestanding altar went away, and he strictly celebrated both Masses ad orientem. And as far as I can tell, based on the pictures I have seen uploaded as of late, it looks like he still continues to celebrate both old and new ad orientem. So, but anyway, to go back, yes, so I had a falling away, went into Zen Buddhism for about a year and a half, and gradually worked my way over into preparing to earnestly pursue some form of some strange Frankenstein man-made tradition of Christian Wicca, until I came across. So it was during this time that a few things happened. The first is that the SSPX announces that they are building a seminary, or they had laid the cornerstone for the seminary. I remember attending that Easter Sunday Mass with my family, where they laid the cornerstone. At that point, it was 2013, I had not yet fallen away. So I was present for that. And then eventually they, around 2015 or so, my family begins attending the chapel at the seminary. Fast forward to about 2017, I learn that my siblings are finally going to have their first communion, and that they're going to be in preparation for confirmation. Now, up until this point, I had not been confirmed. Again, because not being able to attend for long enough a parish, and also because there were at the time we did not have any friendly bishops to be able to give us the old give us the old rite of confirmation. And all of a sudden, it's like whatever I had been holding on to fell away. This sort of angst that I had towards my parents for having waited so long um, to fully form my siblings in the faith. So that fell off my shoulders, and right about the same time, I come across two things: Roger Buck's blog, Curiosus Sacratissimum, same title as the book, and a book by Agostino Thaumaturgo. At the time, he was writing under the pseudonym Brother ADA. And the blog post from Roger Buck was about Valentin Tomberg and how Valentin Tomberg helped him to reconsider Catholicism, or to even begin to consider Catholicism. And then Brother Ada's book, or Agostino Thaumaturgo's book, is literally titled The Magic of Catholicism. In fact, I have a copy right here. This is the exact copy that I had picked up. In fact, it arrived the day that my dad reached out to me. My father reached out to me to tell me that my siblings were receiving First Communion. And let's see, what is it? Real Magic for Devout Catholics is the subtitle. Obviously, an incredibly provocative subtitle. But what's funny is what's rather quite what's quite fascinating to me is his Thaumaturgo's simple trying to see if I can find it. Somewhere in the beginning here. He basically lays out that all that that magic, quote unquote magic, according to Thaumaturgo, is applied theology. If you take Catholic theology and you put it into practice, miraculous things do happen. Therefore, that's how he defines magic. This acted as my sort of refresher catechism, for better or worse. And quite frankly, looking like I'll have to reread this again, but frankly, I don't see, nothing in here jumped out at me aside from his little modification to the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, which I didn't have any real interest in, since it has its origins in the Golden Dawn, which is all just, the Golden Dawn is just stupid. I've always thought that the Golden Dawn is inauthentic. Always had been. always would be. So this was sort of my re-catechizing, because honestly in here is just a refresher on what the Catholic Church teaches, what are the seven sacraments, what is grace, what are sacramentals, what is the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, what is the theology of transubstantiation, what's the theology of angels, what are angels, how do they operate, why there are angels, what's the Catholic teaching on guardian angels, and all of that is in this book. If I can just put it away without messing up the rest of the shelf here. There we go. And so there was that book re-catechized me, got me to have a profound illumination of conscience. And so I made my way to confession. And as I was going up to confession, terrible pit in my stomach. Just had a horrible, horrible pit in my stomach. I thought I was going to throw up. And it was sunny. It was a beautiful day. The weather was wonderful. I rolled down the windows. I was afraid I was going to have to pull over to throw up or something. But I get there, and Father and I sit down for about 2 hours. It was a 2-hour-long confession going through everything. Him giving spiritual direction. Me being able to eventually, finally confess some things I had held on to. So, before confirmation and as I was growing up, there were things that were just too unconscionable in my mind to ever confess. And so I've my whole childhood, my whole adolescence was practically just not even giving full confession, sacrilegious communion out the wazoo. And so now I'm laying it all out there. And then we get to the act of contrition and absolution. And as we begin that portion of confession, all of a sudden, the wind starts blowing. Rain starts pouring down. There's a bright flash of lightning, massive crashes of thunder. And then as soon as we finish, it stops. The sun comes back out. We go outside. Father's poor garden's like completely trashed from the wind. A bunch of branches were shaken off of trees in the garden, falling. The branches, heavy branches, falling into his flower beds. And mind you, this is approaching the Feast of Corpus Christi. So we looked at each other, and he said, Father said, "Oh, clearly somebody didn't want you coming here today." Or someone is incredibly upset with you. So